What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we have more Madden 19 news to discuss. This one's all about gameplay. EA has released a lot of information about the gameplay and real player motion improvements for this year. At EA Play, the conference really didn't give us much information about the game. We do know now that it's coming out on PC, so that'll be big for some players. But the information here is from the EA Sports website in their new deep dive about gameplay and real player motion. So let's get into it. At the top of this article, it mentions that their top objectives were player control across the field and an immersive NFL experience from start to finish. So the improvements this year had to do with animation and this new feature they're calling real player motion. So that features more realistic player movement and responsiveness with signature behaviors that add to the immersion. So getting into the information with locomotion and run cycles. They've rebuilt the locomotion system and used some technological innovation from other games that EA publishes. The new system is supposed to deliver the precision of making sharp cuts versus rounded turns based on button inputs. So for instance, if you want to make a sharp cut upfield before going out of bounds near the sideline, you just let go of the right trigger, or R2 for the acceleration burst, and move the left stick where you want to go to make a sharp cut. If you want to run at full speed making some minor adjustments, you just hold down the right trigger for acceleration burst to carve through the defense. It seems this year they want us to be managing our acceleration burst a bit more thoughtfully. So the acceleration burst will take you to your top speed, of course, but it prevents you from making the sharp, drastic cuts that you might be looking to make. So you'll have to manage how often you hold down that trigger. So when you're not accelerating and using only the left stick, that's where you make your sharp, precise moves, but you're not going to be at full speed. I do definitely like the sound of that, because even on like Madden 18, where I don't think the game is as responsive as it should be, when you can stay patient and behind your blocks and watch them get set up and run a play as it's designed, it is pretty rewarding. And to have a game hopefully that has a lot more control over, how you hit the gap and the way you do things, I'm looking forward to the running game, especially in 19. And there are some different features here in the running game that hopefully will take that to a new level. So they've reworked the locomotion so players move hopefully in a much more realistic manner. And these run cycles will be visually and functionally separated based on players' height, weight, position, and ratings. So there are multiple versions of these cycles so players look and feel unique. And I'm hoping that it actually plays out that way, so that there is a drastic difference between controlling a back like LaShawn McCoy, who's known for being very shifty and making sharp cuts. He should be like the most fun player to use in this game. There should be a big difference in using a player like him or using a player like, say, Marshawn Lynch. Now, it's hard to say how much of an impact any of these features have right now because we haven't seen raw gameplay to judge. We've only gotten the trailer, and, if you've seen one Madden trailer, you've kind of seen them all. Lots of great visuals and flashy animations, but how do things play out on a play-to-play basis? That's what we all want to know. So there are some new mechanics that are going to impact the running game this year, and the first one is called One Cut. And this is just putting your foot in the ground and getting downhill. So this mechanic is all about being able to burst out of a controlled cut in a drastic direction change. So when you make these cuts, there will be a small timing window to activate a faster version of the acceleration burst as the outside plant foot hits the turf, simulating the burst ball carriers get when sticking their foot in the ground and hitting the hole. But be aware, this mechanic is so powerful, it comes with a heavy stamina hit, so you'll have to be smart about when to deploy the move, as you'll most likely only have the energy to pull off one in a single play. The speed and effectiveness of the one cut is of course tailored to fit each player's individual ratings and scales per your difficulty level. So when you use this mechanic, there's going to be a faster acceleration burst. I definitely need to see how that works. I want to see how that transition in speed plays out and if it does look realistic and seem fair. But overall, I like the idea behind the mechanic. Next, they have the strafe burst, and this one goes to defense. It's their counter to the one cut. So when you're strafing using the left trigger or L2, you can accelerate out of your strafe and into a sprint by releasing the strafe button and quickly activating the acceleration burst. So it's the same timing window as the one cut. and the two go hand in hand. I like that they put a defensive counter in here, and I think that accelerating out of the strafe is a feature the defense has needed for a while, especially when you're using a linebacker and you just want to get downhill as quick as possible to the ball carrier. Next up, we have branching special moves. So this is essentially just transitioning from one move to another and how it's supposed to be a lot more authentic and feel better. You have the creativity to transition from jukes to spins and back to a juke, so hopefully this new locomotion and real player motion make that aspect of the game a whole lot more interesting. I hope at the same time, though, that defenses aren't just getting juked out and spun out as bad as they were in Madden 18, because I don't want another year of that. Next up, hit the hole. So this is all about getting through tight gaps in the trenches, and this makes it so you get a bit more control in this normally congested area of the running game. So you're going to use the right stick, and you can use it to make a quick direction change to get through a gap in the line. So you flick the stick toward the gap that you want, and you'll see your player make a contextually appropriate direction change into the gap that will get him through quickly and efficiently without tripping over his linemen or getting stuck behind them. I definitely think that this was much needed, especially after recent years where locomotion in the game has been a little bit slower, and I like that compared to past years where players were a bit more free-flowing. But the control over the player hasn't been there ever since they made some of those changes, so I really hope this year the running game feels as good as ever. I did like some of the improvements this year, but most of that had to do with blocking and not the actual control of the ball carrier. So now being able to pick the gap that you want to get through and having clean animations to do it, that should be awesome. One more thing you can do as a ball carrier is push the pile. So this is building on what hit the hole does, and if there is no gap, if there is nothing you can run through cleanly, you can run into your blockers essentially to try and get the most out of a play. So it's an extension of the truck stick mechanic. You use the right stick and you can use that to push the pile forward or guide the blocking engagement out of your way. And this will be based on player ratings of all three players involved, the ball carrier, blocker, and defender. So I'm wondering, is this going to play out differently in the case of like a double team or more congested spaces? We don't know yet. And the results should be different based on the players you have there. So you have bruising running backs who might truck defenders, and shifty backs might just try to guide the blocking in front of them. So I'm hoping that the running game this year is the best it's ever been. It should be. Next up, we have some improvements for catching. They wanted to address player feedback about players being caught in catch animations they didn't ask for, and receivers jumping high in the air that you really couldn't defend when you're trying to knock the ball out. So there's a new mid-air collision system for receivers who like to high point the ball, and additions to the catch system to give player agency when using your player. Defenders will have more control to decide between interacting with the receiver during the catch or afterwards. Play receiver is now all about hitting the receiver hard to make sure he doesn't come down with the ball. On offense, you will have more time to make your decision about the catch you want and react later in the play to make your final choice. The catch mechanics remain the same, but no longer will you jump in the air while holding either possession or rack catch mechanics, as we've invested in staying closer to the true intent of those mechanics. But beware that if you attempt to rack catch a ball that is thrown too high, you will most likely not be able to catch it. I guess I didn't think about this area of the game too much for improvements in 19, but I do agree that defenses do have some improvements to make as far as how they defend receivers in the various ways they're trying to attack the football. So I'm hoping for more improvements on the defensive side of things. I always want to see more of a fight from the corners, because we've had so many years of Madden where the corners are at a disadvantage for one reason or another, and I'd like to see them have more of a chance to create incompletions. I like having more games of Madden where you have true incompletions and not just dropped interceptions and interceptions. I want to see a lot more of the true receiver corner fight that we see on Sundays, because the corners in this league today are quite good. So we'll see how much of an impact this has. Next up is animation quality, and the first section here talks about tackling. There's a new momentum tackle system that takes into account momentum, speed, and weight, so that tackles play out as they're expected and based on how the tackles kinda start. So when a defensive back is standing still or strafing to make a conservative tackle on a big bowling ball type of back running at him, with a full head of steam, you'll see the defensive back get taken for a ride while getting that back on the ground. Conversely, if the running back is trying to change directions and gets popped by a big linebacker running downhill, the running back will take the force of that hit and fall down in the appropriate manner. One animation I am so tired of seeing is when you run to the outside and you're met by a defensive back and you get into kind of a standstill and the defensive back kind of just like lifts you up and puts him down. I don't know how to really describe it any other way. It's an awkward looking animation. They gotta get better, and hopefully they do now. They've also focused on the tackling physics system so that players who add on in a gang tackle or get involved in the play late can find the correct animations to use. They no longer go into a ragdoll state. I am definitely looking forward to that. And then they talk about the end of the play. Anytime a tackle happens in Madden, players need to get up off the ground. To ensure that players get up and look authentic as the players during the tackle, they built a new get up system that allows players to smoothly transition from hitting the ground to getting up off the ground. You'll see players athletically roll with momentum to get up quickly, or see players intelligently delay getting up while other players on top of them get up first. There we go. Lastly, we did a complete refresh of all the hit stick animations. Every hit stick in the game will be new and use the momentum tackle system to ensure the same visual quality we expect with all of our tackles. Some new features also come in with the hit stick improvements. You can now attempt to hit stick a receiver during a catch, but be careful not to be early or you will be flagged for pass interference. The timing window has been decreased so that the hit stick is a true skill mechanic that will come with a heavier risk of broken tackles than we've ever had before. Alright, I like being able to hit stick receivers and further increase incompletions. Sounds good. Up next, they have signatures to build in some more immersion. They wanted to add personality to players, and one thing they focused on is quarterback signatures. So they've tried to find what makes each quarterback unique from their behaviors and their mannerisms. So they found that Aaron Rodgers adjusts his thigh pad all the time. Patrick Mahomes is very deliberate when making pre-snap adjustments, and these behaviors will be reflected in Madden 19 on multiple levels, including contextual, functional, and audio. So I wonder if that means that we're going to see some quarterbacks audible a bit more, because I feel like we haven't seen that since Peyton Manning was in the league. I remember playing Madden years ago and he would just audible all the time. I hated playing the Colts for that reason. I didn't care that he could carve up a defense. It was the time it took to eventually get there I didn't like. And I really hope that they work more on that. Imagine that you have the better quarterbacks in the game for the AI are more likely to hot route or audible into a favorable situation. That to me would help separate the great from the not so great quarterbacks. So I like that there are going to be some signatures now for these quarterbacks. They're going to launch with a handful of quarterbacks fully supported, and they want to add more via updates. Then they have user-controlled celebrations. This is nice to see. So after you score a touchdown, sack, or safety, you'll have one of 5 celebration options. I cannot wait to spam sack celebrations personally. So right stick up is team or group celebration, to the right is a spike, down is a player signature, left is a dance, and clicking it is swagger, where you steal a signature animation from the opposing team. I will love that feature. They've gone through the film to find celebrations that NFL players are doing, and they've brought in some of the popular ones like Duck Duck Gray Duck, get it right, the bobsled, the safe breaker, and many versions of the Gronk spike. So they also want to update this through updates. I like that. I like the whole idea of giving quarterbacks some signatures, or really any player some signatures. And I do hope they have more audibles. I know I complained about Peyton Manning, but it was a good thing that was in the game. But did you have to audible every play, Peyton? That was a little ridiculous. Next up, some coverage changes here, and these are good to see. They have adjusted some logic for cover 4, cover 3, and cover 2. So for cover 4, they have 2 new versions, quarters and palms. And those 2 are referred to as man-match defenses, which means the defenders in coverage can match up and play man-to-man based on what's happening in front of them. So against the formation where a slot receiver is present, and if the slot receiver runs a quick out, the defense in cover 4 quarters will handle this route with the quarter flat player. In the same scenario with palms, the defense will handle this route with a cornerback who's playing outside quarter. So it plays more like a cover 2. This would go nice with some pictures, I think. For cover 3, an emphasis was placed on improving the logic for curl flat defenders and adding rule sets for standard cover 3 so it's better equipped to handle concepts from trips and bunch formations. So when the offense lines up in trips or bunch, cover 3 match, cover 3 sky, and cover 3 buzz plays will function more like cover 3 Mabel from Madden 18. And if you're not familiar with cover 3 Mabel, it's cover 3 where you have your deep thirds. And on the offense's strong side, you're going to have your purple buzz zone and your flat zone. There's one linebacker and a hook over the middle, and then there's a buzz zone on the other side. So typically on the side where there are probably no receivers or maybe a tight end, there isn't a flat defender. So it's going to play more like that. For Tampa 2, they focused on that middle read linebacker. That's such an important role for that defense. And cover 2 has been pretty easy to exploit with the right players and the right plays. So the middle read player will do a better job of getting to his deep middle spot to defend those deep passing routes. And they've also worked on the cloud flat players to defend high-low concepts with all new press animations. For protect the sticks, it's been overhauled with new logic, so underneath zones will spot drop to the depth for the first down marker, which is how I always wanted it to work. And then new plays. There's a new formation, a new personnel called Big Nickel over G. It's a 4-2-5 personnel, 4 linemen, 2 linebackers, 5 defensive backs like a traditional nickel, but instead of 3 corners, you get 3 safeties. I love that. And that's the end of the article. So definitely some good information here. We all want to see how it works. So when you do get to see gameplay, focus mostly on the running game and how smooth that plays out, the tackles and how natural they look, and hopefully post-play the game looks better as well. I like the sound of a lot of these things. The one concern for me in 19 is that there's a lot more emphasis placed on the things that we control and not so much on the AI. This talked very little about the AI, just basically coverage principles. But as far as quarterback AI, I don't know if that's going to be better, and it's one of my main concerns about the Madden franchise moving forward, especially if it's not addressed. So let me know what you thought of this information down below in the comment section. Which new feature is your favorite? For me, I'm probably looking forward most to just the momentum in tackling. That's been a big focus for a lot of us in the Madden community that want a more realistic game. I want to see tackles really reflect momentum and the difference between players. But all these features could be very cool if done well. So leave your feedback below, please leave a like on the video, and subscribe for much more Madden 19 news when it is released, especially next week, because franchise news is supposed to drop late next week, I'm assuming, and I'll be talking about it then as soon as we get the information. I will see you all later. Have a great day.